Deciding with my hands, you have stopped my master plan. Why can't you understand? If I can't have you, no one can.
Welcome back to Andertons TV. You've just heard the wonderful Sammy and David from Employed to Serve with a track called Atonement, which is that a new track for you guys?
It is indeed, yeah. The first single we've released from our new album, Fallen Star.
Excellent.
And, yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, these guys got in touch, I think through your management company. I hadn't realised you were as local as you are to us. So, yes, we're...
Woking, born and bred.
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously... carrying on the fine tradition of great music that's come out of Woking.
What do you reckon Paul Weller would make of us, though?
I think he'd be all right with it.
Yeah?
I think he's anything that's good music. It's all fine. So look,
sick.
Welcome on. And I just thought we'd take 15-20 minutes, tell me a little bit about the band. When it formed, how you guys got together, and then I just want to do the sort of it's the gear. I'm always fascinated with how musicians are drawn towards
the main reason
certain
we're here.
gear. So tell us about how Employed to Serve got together.
For sure. So it was founded by me and my wife back in, I want to say like 2011, 2012 now. So it started off just as we were, just like turned 20 or something like that, and been together for a few years, and we're like, now seems like the appropriate time to start a metal band.
Husband and wife metal band.
Every couple, there's a time in every couple's life.
It's like kids, house.
We need something to spice up this
band.
relationship. I know. Let's start a metal band.
Exactly, and we started just as a two-piece. Just I was programming the drums, and we put out some early EPs whilst we were kind of finding our sound. Eventually wanted to play live, so we're like, better find some friends then, and we did. And then fast forward to now, we've had a few people in and out of the band over the years, but my good friend here, David, has now been in the band for 5 or so years, and our bass player Nathan and drummer Casey have also been in for the same amount of time. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind of a journey, I guess, a bit too much to touch on all of the different eras of the band, but it started with both me and my wife wanting to start a metal band, and we've met some great people along the way, such as this chap here, to help us do it.
I've only heard a couple of your tracks, but what seems interesting is that you take the sort of melodic vocal, or at least on the tracks I've heard, and then your wife, I'm assuming, is the lady I saw in the videos.
That's right.
She takes on more of the screaming sort of element of the vocal. Has that always been the case?
No, so I've kind of crept in more and more as time's gone on. I'm slowly trying to push her out of the limelight and be like, I'm the lead singer of the band. No, so we didn't have an awful lot of clean singing when we first started, and then as musicians do, this is our 5th record now, you start to get a bit more curious about, pushing the boundaries of your songwriting, and I'm influenced by a lot of melodic and music with melody, and it's only been natural that's kind of crept into our sound, and I was the only one willing to sort of have a go at singing, so that's kind of led to me creeping in more and more as time goes on.
You've got a great voice. You shouldn't put yourself down. I liked it. Look, I'm just going to ask you both. So we'll start with David. Tell us about kind of your sort of guitar heroes and your sort of influences as you were sort of growing up.
My guitar heroes, I'm trying to think, because originally when I first started playing, I was more of a bassist than a guitar player. And the first album that got me wanting to play was actually Antichrist Superstar by Marilyn Manson.
Okay.
But for some reason it was the bass sound on it. Really enjoyed the bass sound. So got a bass, played that for a while. My brother then got a guitar, and I was like, oh, more strings, more you can do with it. So I kept nicking that, we'd fight about it, and then my dad was like, I'll just get you a guitar. So I did. But as for guitar players, the main one for me, that comes to mind is Trey from Morbid Angel. Mm-hmm. Just a very kind of unique way to, he has just a very unique approach to sort of riffs and kind of, just that sort of kind of chunky swell of Covenant and things like that.
It's that push and pull.
Exactly.
A lot of bending of the notes.
A lot of bending notes out of tune, just weird. If you listen to the song God of Emptiness, I remember seeing the video for that. You might be familiar with the Beavis and Butthead one. They're there's that scream. He's like, oh, was that a bear? So good. But seeing that video and the way those guitarists kind of churn in and out of each other, just was instant resonating for me. So Trey was a big one. The band Neurosis as well. I kind of took a lot of influence from sort of moody kind of post metal. But I don't think I've ever been a guitar player.
That's what I'm saying. It's riff.
Yeah.
And I like that terminology of the push-pull. So 2 guitar players. So not necessarily about big screaming guitar solos. More about the
not for
underlying.
me. Not really. It's not a huge one. When I think of guitar solos, again, I go back to Morbid Angel, Trey, Eric Rutan as well. Or used to be Morbid Angel, but Hate Eternal. Those were the only sort of lead. I consider them the sort of lead guitars that I like, but I've always been a riff guy, really.
Interesting.
Big riffs,
And we'll talk about how that's influenced your gear choices as well, as a sort of a follow-up thing. But yeah, Sammy, who were the players you were listening to?
Well, initially we were just talking about him moments ago, but my first huge guitar inspiration was Tom Morello, and as I was kind of joking, it's probably a little bit hard to listen to our music and look at my guitar choice and perhaps see that, but for me it was the rhythm in his playing and the mutes and the bits in between the notes he was playing, that's kind of really worn off on me as a guitar player over the years, and I still feel it to this day. It's when I go to show someone a riff sometimes, it's almost hard to break it down, because in the subtleties of how it's played, sometimes there's these little like rhythmical bits that are in between the notes that are being played. And I can only, look to Tom Morello for that being, the influence for that part of my playing.
It's very percussive, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably more evident on our sort of earlier works. That's kind of a bit more chaotic and mathcore sounding. That kind of shines through a bit more. But yeah, I'd have to say, as a guitar player, he's had like probably the biggest, stamp on me. And my playing, and then of course, like many metalheads, Dimebag Darrell, of course. I mean, that was my era of him being like the ultimate guitar hero, and still to this day, I think he's one of those guitar players. Like when you hear one of his solos, or even if you just hear his rhythm tone, you know who it is like instantly. And he could achieve that with, I feel like could have achieved that with any guitar he played. Like he could pick up, the cheapest thing in the guitar shop and would have been able to make it sing,
Would have been interesting to see. I mean, I was never a huge sort of Pantera fan at the time. Most of my sort of metal kind of journey has happened much later in my life. I kind of seem to miss it when it's a thing new, and then like 15, 20 years later I go, I'm into this.
It's like clicks.
But I did get to go and see Damage Plan.
Oh, okay.
Just pure, one of the brands that we sold, but like, do you want to go and see this? Damn it! And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to like it, but I've got to go and see Dimebag.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I mean,
and
legend.
It was, I don't know, just I think that guy could have played any genre of music he wanted to, and would have been virtuoso level.
Yeah.
He was such on a different level to 99% of other players, wasn't he?
Just effortless.
Yeah.
But also never like over the top. I mean, the guy could shred, no doubt about that, but it was always tasteful. It wasn't for like the sake of it, what I mean?
No,
very
amazing
musical,
player.
like,
Yeah.
Going back to that Tom Morello thing, and something we were talking about before, and I think this is always worth people doing. It's so easy to find the tabs now for songs that you like and go, okay, I'll work it out. But I think it's so important to try and use your ear to really go, how is that person playing it? Because 99 times out of 100, they're not. It's impossible to tab out. As you were rightly saying, it's the pauses, it's the slight rhythmical change.
And things.
Yeah,
Exactly,
or sometimes it's just, it's just tabbed with the wrong version of the chord. It's just, it's a different inversion of that chord. So whenever you're playing it, you go, I'm like 98% there, but I'm not 100%. And it is that
missing.
difference is, I don't know how many times, probably it's something I get to do more here, but when you have the guitar player on that actually wrote and recorded the original version of the song, and then they play it, something clicks, like that 2% that's missing when another guitar player plays it and they play all the chords right and everything. It's there, and it's that's what you're saying, I think, and that's what I think gives a guitar player their voice. And
absolutely,
I think we should all try and search for that. Like, what is your
what's your USP?
thing?
It is, like I say, it's just the small kind of tiny little things you might do, even like by accident. I mean, like for me, it's like little weird things I do that I find, which might contribute to how I sound. But like, for example, if I'm doing like a lot of picking, I tend to do like up picking, like upstrokes.
Yeah,
but it's like little small tiny little things like that make you. Well,
it
does affect things.
The one we always touch upon whilst we're talking about Pantera is how the walk riff is played.
Yeah, the walk riff.
I mean, everyone plays it like.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's a shuffle.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like ZZ Top style, and it's like that minute detail that kind of stops that riff.
From sounding that, having that groove to the way it sounds. It is the small little things you do. Yeah, 100%.
That's great. So, let's talk about gear choices. I mean, you both got Jacksons, you both got Quad Cortexes.
We did.
But what was the journey? I mean, again, we go back to David for a bit. Just you can only have had this particular rig for sort of 2 or 3 years max because it didn't exist before then.
Correct.
So what's been your sort of your journey in guitar gear?
Tone and guitar gear. Well,
tone.
It's been a long road now. So I mean, like my sort of like first time using sort of stacks and things, I've always been a 5150 6505 guy, and that worked very well for a very long time. And that tone's always something I'm familiar with and like mainly. But then we did a tour, a couple of European tours with a band called Gajira. And we were like sort of like opening for that band, big shows, arena
Yeah,
shows,
huge.
and we had like some shows you'd have like 15 minutes to get your shit on stage and be ready to go.
Yeah.
And kind of like with the amp and everything, it was just like I remember it just being very inconsistent every night, and I took a lot of EQing to get it how I wanted. And when you didn't have that amount of time, I just remember playing the shows and not always enjoying it because I'm like, something sounds wrong, it doesn't sound right, it's not there, it's not exactly where I want it. And that thing was just really kind of, well, was at points bringing me down. But Sammy had already had the chord. You had the chord cortex for the second leg, didn't you? Of that tour.
No, I think I had it from the get go. Straight out of COVID, I had the
yeah,
chord,
you did. But I think like, but your tone throughout the whole tour was like, plug in, it's consistent, it's there, and I was like, I really want that. So yeah, eventually I did use a head rush for a while, which was cool, but it just didn't have that bite of the. I don't know if it's a 65.5 tone on here.
Yeah, it's like the EV Red
But
channel.
it is different, and it just sounds like I think I borrowed yours for when we played Whack It, and I was like, this is it. Yeah. So since then,
What was the period when the band playing live with you through a traditional amp and you through quad cortex? Was that noticeable in any way?
Yeah, I think I do remember like
It
our
is,
front
it
of house.
was. Yeah, I don't remember it like from out front. Maybe I remember was it Joe that was sort of saying there's a kind of they kind of blend together quite well.
Right.
Like, because I think I had a bit more of the guitar I was using at the time had a bit more of a mid tone to it.
Yeah.
And through the amp, whilst yours was quite bright, so you could mix it that way. But
I just know that the only reason I say that is, I mean, I'm one of these. I'm like that 1% of the audience that's at a festival, sort of going, well, I wonder what's he using there on stage, you know. But I just know over the last 3 or 4 years, if both bands are digital, it doesn't trigger anything for me. If both bands are analog, it doesn't trigger anything for me. But if one is and one isn't, I don't hear like a nice blend. I always end up going, oh, like
Something's off.
Something sounds more present than the other.
Yeah. I think like once again, the gear you're using was fine, but it just took longer to dial it in. I do remember like our front of house engineer being like, I can get it there to kind of make them a bit more matched, but you know, when we're doing those shows where we have like 15 minutes to set up, you don't necessarily have that time to dial it in. So with this, it's, you know, plug in and play.
and it sounds good, and I like the sound of it. You know, there's the main thing here. It just sounds great. You know, I do obviously still love when I have the chance to go through an amplifier, but yeah, I mean, I very much enjoy it. And
what was nuts in here? I mean, obviously, when you did the playthrough, it sounds like walls of 100-watt valve amplifiers going mad. And when I'm stood in the doorway, which is about 4 meters away, I can hear your string noise. Which is like nuts. You know, that's how relatively quiet we are in the room, which I guess is the beauty of this kind of stuff.
For sure, and it's taken obviously a while for the technology to get here, because I don't think we wouldn't have made the jump unless it was capable of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, these sorts of products have been in the market for 20 or 30 years. They've only relatively recently got to the point where people just can't discern a difference.
100%. I think like that was one of my, obviously using the amp, but the thing I was skeptical of before you got the quad cortex is when we speak about sort of like digital kind of like clones of amps and things, I always think about, you know, the old Line 6 sort of pods. I'm like,
insane mode.
They sounded awful though. Why are we doing this? But no, it's got there now, and I absolutely love it.
Isn't it weird though? At the time, no one thought it sounded awful. So, you did you?
Yeah, I've never liked the sound of it.
See, I always wonder with anything like this. It's like, because I can go back to, you know, Pink, ART, rack mat, you know, and I just remember at the time everyone was like, wow, it sounds amazing. But there was always a point 3 or 4 years later when everyone went, it sounds awful, doesn't it? I'm going back to my old amp, but I wonder if the gear's just got to a point now where that won't
have this interview again in 3 years. And you were right.
Before I ask you about your journey though, guitar-wise, I know that's a relatively recent acquisition for you, but what have you used over the years?
So, I mean, I did start off when I was very young, like LTDs, that sort of thing. Moved on to like Les Pauls, which is one of the reasons why I did kind of pick this model, because I'm used to the feel of it. So I played Les Pauls for a long time. Was very recently playing. So there's a guitar company based in Seattle, run by one guy called Monson. guitars. So I played those for basically since I've joined ETS.
Yeah.
Absolutely insanely cool guitars, and I do have them. I still use them. I still love them. But they were just like touring wise, it was like, because they're very bespoke. If I was to lose one, let's say in an airport in Denmark,
then
if they're gone,
since this happened, did it?
Yeah, it did happen.
Yeah,
but like
with
it was just like things like that. And if I was to lose one, it would be like a disaster. I mean, losing this would be a disaster as well, but on a different scale. And they were obviously like made out of like, they were basically trees, very very lot of wood, and they were quite heavy.
Absolute doorstop.
There were a few like points like playing. It was like, oh god, there goes the back again. So just needed something a bit more lighter and a bit more kind of like. I guess tourable. The Monsons were, but yeah, the Jackson is absolutely fantastic. I love it, and I remember obviously we went to the showroom to try some out, and
that was funny. Yeah,
I was a little bit like, why are we doing this? Well, I've got a guitar, and then you were just like, just get to the room, David, and you were right. Tried one, and I was like, hang on a minute.
So that's an extended scale, right?
It's a 27.5.
Oh, so it's full sort of baritone scale length. What are you guys tuning to?
Drop G sharp.
Yeah,
drop G sharp. That's a new one on me. How much? So that's quite a lot. Blimey, you're not far off, almost like a whole octave.
Yeah. So you need the legs.
Oh my God.
Well, we have like actually a couple of parts in the new album. One song, Breaks Me Down, which we use the.
Oh yeah.
You want to do the honours? So
just because it wasn't long enough.
So you're in G sharp and you've dropped it down a couple of tones from there as well.
I think that's about 7 semitones, that one is.
Which I was thinking about this morning. It is dumb, but that is the classic at home just messing around. Oh, that sounds cool. We'll just do that.
Yeah.
So what have you got to string that with then to get any kind of string tension?
Well, we have at the moment I've got 72s on there, but slight issue with that as well because it doesn't actually fit through the.
You know, so we had Lee Malia on last week, and his bottom E string is an 80.
An 80.
Oh, and he has to re-drill the machine head.
This is the thing. Like, so for us, what we do is we kind of like unwind the string, and then it out, and then it sort of fits, and you can tune it
as a temporary.
As a temporary, but we are thinking of like kind of potentially.
I had it done on my previous guitar because I guess they keep it kind of narrow in case you want like a lower gauge, but like for the 72s and above you've got to you got to do some intervention.
Exactly. You know what? Actually, I genuinely don't know which tuners out the box can take that gauge.
I'm not sure either,
there you are, internet world. Comment below. What brand of tuner could you retrofit on your guitar to get that sort of thickness of E string through it? But that is lunatic. So, and you've stuck with the stock pickups in that guitar, right?
I mean, they're Seymour Duncan obliterators, I'm pretty sure. But I just thought I'd try it out, and they sound great. I'm happy with them.
Do you know what? I don't know what the lighting is like on camera here, but it's not easy to see what the brand of guitar is. So would you like to give it a plug?
Yeah. This is a Jackson Monarch, folks.
Yeah, it's a good looking guitar there. And I guess they must have done like a blackout series. So
this is like the Pro Plus series, which that was the decider for us because I think a lot of their baritone range wasn't far off being a 27, but they had like a 26 or 26 and a half. And I mean, whether you can really notice a difference, I don't know, but we were like on the edge because we really liked Jackson as a company. But as soon as they put these out, it was like,
there it is.
Let's go, and they just play so good.
Yeah, they do play amazing. I absolutely love playing it.
Well, in the practice room this weekend as well, we were kind of commenting on like how much more the guitar cuts through because I feel like for the sound, like as lovely as the Monson sound, it's more of like a Les Paul effect.
Yeah,
right?
so they're quite warm sounding, but this one's got that bit more of attack, a bit brighter.
That bite that we need.
Yeah, also like
I'm past the whole anti. Sort of EMG phase of my guitar playing life, and I embrace it all now. But you said just before we started filming, do your EMG and then back to passive because of what you saw.
Yeah, this was when my previous band, Ageless Oblivion, we were recording. I think it was our first album, and I had an ESP with EMGs on. And I remember kind of looking at the wavelength when we were recording. It was very much like it's like a rectangle.
Yeah.
And our producer at the time, Chris Fielding, was like, I mean, it sounds good, but try the Les Paul. And I'm like, Les Paul, what's the pickups? He was like, just try it, see what happens. So I recorded it with the Les Paul, the same riff, and it sounded great. And then I remember sort of like you're getting that sort of swell and those sort of dynamics, and you look at the kind of wavelength from I think it was like Logic or Pro Tools, just like so you're like there you can actually bring those dynamics back in, and that kind of sealed it for me. I've always been a passive person since then.
Is that just because the output of the EMGs is too high, or do you think it's something to do with just the dynamic range of an active pickup?
I think it's because the signal's like literally being compressed, isn't it?
Right. What the preamp in it is almost
exactly.
the
I'm not really sure the whole reason, but it's more the end result that I was like interested in. And I have played a few guitars with EMGs since then. It's never felt right. I don't know if that's like psychosomatic or not, but I've always been a passive person.
So it's a really polarizing subject, that one is, because guys that are into the whole EMG active thing have obviously made a conscious decision that is what they want.
Yeah.
And then obviously you'll meet another guitar player that's made a very conscious decision that it's not what they want.
I think it's a personal thing, isn't it? It depends what kind of player you are. I guess with EMGs, if you're wanting like quite tight kind of riffing and sounds and things like that, could be more beneficial to do that. But I do kind of like the fire of it, the bit of a
because I would argue, at least in my experience, the passive pickups are tighter, because with the active ones they can end up being a bit mushy, because I did have EMGs in my spare ESP I was using, and then you compared that with the exact same guitar but with a set of bare knuckles in them instead, and it was just tighter. But I mean, that's not to say you can't get a similar result with actives, because I guess people who like those just spend the time getting it to where they want it. But
I got one more question, and then if you wouldn't mind just giving us some tones from that just in isolation, and then we'll move on to sort of Sammy's rig. But my final question is, why do both of you have separate guitar tuners with your Quad Cortex?
That's
kill switch.
It's so much easier, and like
worried
also,
that you're going to hit the wrong.
The first time I played with a Quad Cortex, I think was this Romanian festival.
Rockstad.
There was some stories from that one. But the main one is I just had the Quad Cortex, and I think I accidentally, rather than hit the tuner, I hit the kind of switch to change scenes or something.
Yeah.
And that was absolute palaver to get.
It's only like a second you have to hold it down for, but it's a whole hold down situation.
You can't just make one of the other knobs just instantly turn a tuner on then?
I mean, maybe, but for me, when I got it, I just sort of put that in, and I quite like just the back. I'm wearing boots as well, so I just want to.
It's really surprised me over that, given how successful they've been with Quad Cortex. It's phenomenal sounding. They've now got. Must have 80-90% of the guitar scene, as in who've decided to go digital are using Quad Cortex. And I've always looked at it as a foot switching format and gone, they're pretty close together, aren't they? And it's like I don't know why they don't. Yeah. I'm super surprised they haven't just made either an ancillary kind of bigger board or just a bigger version of it with the foot switches.
Stance, I think, because I was just thinking in my head then, if you're standing on stage, you're used to kind of standing a bit like that to put your tuner on, whereas if you're kind of coming over here a little bit crouched together, something feels wrong about it. It's so ingrained that it's like, ooh.
But there you go. So separate. That's why. So separate tuner just to give you that instant.
It feels good.
Can we have a little like pull out your favourite patch that you've got on QC and just play us like 20 seconds of your favourite?
Well, I think like the main sort of like kind of guitar, like the distorted tone, is kind of what I'm very much into. Just kind of again that 6505 sort of sound. Just kind of riffs now.
We were EVH users before the Quad Cortex as well, so
I mean, it sounds legit to me. It feels great. Don't fix it.
Yeah. What, are you using a heavy amount of noise gate on there, or
on that one? Yes, but we do have a setting to turn the noise gate off. So if we want some feedback, so it's a bit more noisier, that one.
We'll want to bust out the big rock and roll engine with the kill switch.
Tom Morello's
it's very. I didn't realise you both had kill switches.
We do have a kill switch.
Oh my god, it could be the ultimate sort of. We have this terrible. Actually, I say we. This is Pete has this. If I overplay, or whilst he's trying to set up, I'm sort of or where there's too many people in the room noodling together, Pete calls it Brighton Electric, which is basically just like when you're in a rehearsal studio with
exactly.
he goes, it's all getting a bit Brighton Electric in here. And I can just see if you've got two guitar players with kill switches, it could get very Brighton Electric at the end of every song.
I went to Brighton Institution of Modern Music and did a few practices Brighton Electric. The second you said it, I was like, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, that is absolutely, I don't think that's any slur against Brighton Electric. It's just rehearsal studio.
In general, yeah. But like, it was like we were joking beforehand, like, what would we ever use this for? I was like, if I've got a problem, I can do SOS on it, just like
David's in trouble, quick! Send a text.
You can just play it, but no, it's much more easy to do that.
That's genius way of communicating with your tech, isn't it?
Yeah.
People won't even realise sending Morse code messages.
I need another beer.
Yeah, other sort of settings. I mean, Sammy did a little preview of it,
But the kind of octave. So obviously we have a song Brace Me Down, just can't remember the name for it. Is that which is a lot of fun.
And just to get on stage, you're hearing that predominantly in ear or wedges, or do you try and have some backline?
In-ears, yeah.
All in ear.
So we do have backline with us as well. So because you play a mixture of places. If you're supporting, like Gajira or something, you could get away with a completely silent stage because everyone's like a good bit in front of the PA system. But if you're playing a club and you've got someone right down the front and they're standing, behind the PA, you need something coming at you. But yeah, front of house is all quad cortex, but we've literally just switched to like the EVH 2x12 cabs because we're sick of carting
We're in
around
our
4x12s. Yeah, you know what I mean. We've all got bad backs and like, so we're downsizing the back line, but I think we'll keep it for the most part because it's just nice.
And you just use like a Seymour Duncan power stage or something, do you?
Well.
Tried
that would be the sensible thing to do.
I do have one, but we tried it in the practice room and like it just didn't feel the same, did it? Like I think you have to crank it all the way to the top to get like the similar sort of effect.
So we are very dumb, and we're still currently. Bearing in mind when we were trying out the Seymour Duncan, we were still in like the halfway house of. We were using the quad cortex, but we also had a mic on a cab, so we were kind of blending the two. Now we're just all quad cortex out front of house. So at that point, when we were A/B-ing the Seymour Duncan next to our EVH 5150s,
in the effects return.
It didn't. Cut the mustard.
Oh man, that's never. No little, solid state power amp in a box this big is going to outperform the valve power section of a 5150.
But now we're in the position where we're not actually using any of the sound coming from the cab to go to front of house. We're kind of a bit more open to maybe we can sacrifice that as it's only sort of acting as like a little bit extra.
Yeah, I don't. You know what I was not that this is your genre of music, but I really like the guy who presents our keyboard channel tours with a pop act, big pop act, and they were supporting Bryan Adams recently. Awesome. And Keith Scott is now using on stage. He has his Basemans, so that's what he hears.
Yeah.
And front of house is his digital recreation of those. But I'm not sure what it is. But so, and I just thought, I think that's probably the ultimate setup then, because everybody's happy. So the guitar player on stage is hearing something super familiar. So you're not even worried about miking what's on stage.
No,
because it's only there for you to hear it. So you've got exactly what you're familiar with. You've got all the juiciness of valve tones and everything. And front of house is super happy because he's just got a pair of XLR cables and the same sound every night. It's just like
simplicity
happy
is genius,
days. So I think you'll probably see. I don't know. I might be wrong, but my gut feeling is that I still think you'll see players. This kind of rig will evolve into the what do you hear on stage versus what does the audience hear.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see. We'll see.
Time will tell.
Right, Sammy, do the same journey.
Right, so
got a bit more to talk about.
It's quite interesting because I bought all of my first proper guitars from Andertons, so it's quite a cool full circle moment to be here doing this today. Like the first one I got was the Epiphone Black Beauty the 3 gold pickups.
Great choice.
Yeah, it was between that or the Cream Epiphone SG that I think was quite popular at the time, and I think I picked well. I think the Black Les Paul was definitely a bit more.
I think I remember you playing that in Oblivion Eyes.
And Employed to Serve, actually.
Oh, yeah,
early day, yeah. So Employed to Serve has seen me play a lot of different guitars. I mean, so the tuning started from me using a 7-string. So I came out of one band into ETS, starting it, from scratch. Playing a 7-string, realised wasn't really the vibe for the band, so switched to the Les Paul, which hated being in drop G sharp. I can tell you that much. It is not built for it whatsoever. But then it took me quite a while to get to a
You'd be
guitar.
better off tuning that to the G sharp above and then using an octave pedal or something, wouldn't you?
Exactly. And that guitar took a beating as well. Like it fell at a show or something. There was like a crack, just behind the headstock, and then the fixed strings were just like yanking it away. Then I switched to, I got a Fender Jazzmaster. Once again, just the standard scale.
Wow.
Wasn't particularly, made for this
What
tuning.
was that, like a Jim Root inspired
No,
thing?
just a regular
with
Jazzmaster.
the trem system and everything?
Yeah, everything.
God,
yeah,
it was a nightmare for this sort of stuff.
Exactly. I mean, so musically we've travelled a bit. So we started off a bit more of a scrappy, hardcore, mathcore kind of band. So like heavily inspired by like the Dillinger Escape Plan and Norma Jean and the Chariot and kind of stuff like that. And that always had kind of like reckless regard for what guitars you were using, and not necessarily thinking too hard about what's going to be the best fit.
Yeah.
It was just grab something, stick a load of gaffer tape on it, and off you go.
Make it work.
Yeah.
I quite like that.
Yeah, and it served like the band, for no pun intended, for where we were at that point in time. And it wasn't until the Squire baritones came out, and so it was obviously very, very similar to what I was using because it was a Jazzmaster, but here it was this 30-inch scale length. Got one of those, and it was like, oh my god, this handles the tuning so much better. And it's played that for a couple of years. But the only and then we started to progress further down this metallic route that we've gone down with the addition of like guitar solos and lead lines, and those, I don't know if you've played one, I'm sure you have, those Jazzmaster baritones.
Yeah.
You get up the neck and there's this huge bolt-on neck that's just like not the easiest thing to manoeuvre around, and also playing an hour long. You never played one, did you?
No, thank goodness no.
Yeah,
Just
that would
too
have been
heavy,
a
was it?
nightmare.
they sounded incredible,
Yeah.
they really did, because obviously being that long a scale length, they just held the tuning perfectly. But
Just thinking of playing that riff in Whose Side Are You On and thinking,
oh yeah, anything where
on
you
like a
stretch it
30
like
scale
this.
length.
But I can tell you, like when you're playing like a headline set, and if you were super dehydrated and you're not being able to drink water, you ended up playing riffs like with one finger because like your hands just cramping up so much. So that had to change.
Wow.
So I jumped back, funnily enough, to I think the second guitar I bought from Andertons, so I'd had for years at this point, which was the LTD MH400B, which so happened to be a baritone, just by chance, and that obviously neck through, super lightweight, and a bit more suited to the style of music we were starting to write. So I had that, and then I got like a newer one of those. And that kind of like led us to using these sort of more lightweight guitars. So that one I originally bought from Andertons did have the EMGs in it, and I'd learned, since I bought it, that they weren't particularly for me.
Right.
I'd been using the bare knuckle nail bomb pickups up until that point, but they were great for like the kind of more scrappy stuff I was talking about, and the more kind of like rhythmical kind of stuff. But wanted something a bit more precise, so I started using the Ragnaroks, which just I feel. Sound incredible. And then Jackson brought out these lovely guitars. We've always been like super buzzed on them as a company, and all they do for kind of like smaller artists and championing like their whole roster. And love their guitars as well, but they just didn't have something that was in our range. So when these came out, it was like,
is that the first crazy pointy guitar you've ever had?
I did have a BC Rich, but I never used it live because I never got like a hard case for it. So I think it was one of like my like first jobs. I was like, well, I got some walking around money now, I'm gonna go buy a BC Rich.
And what is it just an aesthetic, the pointy thing, or is there because it's quite a bit less wood, isn't it? So it must be lighter weight than
I guess. I mean, these guitars, like they are quite light, and I think going back to what David was saying, just playing this kind of stuff, and the longer sets and the stretches, having something lighter just really, really helps. And that was one of the things I loved about that LTD MH400B, how lightweight it was, and the neck through neck is just super easy to play.
I think that the blackout finish on them both, they do look super cool.
It's the Batmobile, right?
So what were you using amp-wise before you went to QC?
EVH as well.
Right.
So started, with the PV 6505 for many years. Then the EVHs came out, and I don't know if you would agree, but like we always found that, not that we use it much, but the clean tone on the PVs never was really there. It did one thing and really well, and it wasn't very versatile. But then the EVHs came out, and it was like a better, well-rounded amp. And can't fault it. It sounds great. And we're still using, a very similar preset on the Quad Cortex these days, but the practicality of this, is just unrivaled. And I think when we're sort of having to fly in for festivals, we're doing a support tour where we have literally, there were some dates on that tour where it was so against, against us time-wise. Yeah,
the first show.
The first show where,
God.
this big arena in Belgium, it's the first date of the tour, and obviously it's their first date, so they've got a few teething problems with, production and stuff, and we're just like, okay, you got to go on now.
Got 10 minutes.
What do drummers do? It's like,
grin and bear it.
Is it like you're sort of going, I've only got 15 minutes to set up, so I'm just going to bring my little, man bag on and put it down.
Yeah,
and
there
off we
you go. Plug it in.
Presumably the drummer's just going, where's my version of the Quad Cortex? Or do they? Is there a standard? Because they won't be allowed to use the main drummer's kit or anything, will they?
No, you set up ahead of time as quickly as you can.
As much as you can
run
do
on
before
stage.
going on stage, the better.
All the mics are clipped and stuff like that, and then we run. We've got the X32, so we can save some presets from like.
So you're mixing your own, or is that just for a monitor mix or something?
So we mix our own in-ears, and then I think there's so one of our front of house engineers, he has like the mixing desk that I think like is the X32 version of the front of house, so he can also like save presets, so you can get pretty close to just plug in and play, but you never know, dodgy XLR lead or whatever, so
it's stressful.
They have more stuff.
If both of you are going to use Quad Cortex, and I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to speak to two guitar players simultaneously who are both using Quad Cortex, is there a knack or what's the right word? Do you need to make your presets patches sound different in a certain way to enable the two guitars to be distinctly audible? Like, is there a knack, or do you not even work? Do you just both dial in whatever your favourite sound is, and that's what it is?
That's been the approach, hasn't it?
Basically.
Yeah. And I think because of that, it's probably led to us having, even though we're using like the EV red channel as like our primary rhythm tone, you've gone in and been like twiddling away going, this is what I like, and therefore we've ended up with something that isn't like the exact same.
Similar but not the same.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it comes down to obviously different guitars, different pickups, we obviously play kind of differently as well, those sort of small details as well. But yeah, we both kind of use the 6505 as the bassist and then kind of just like dialed in what we like just from there, really.
And then trust that if we've done a terrible job of it, our front of house.
It's a bit too. Yeah.
I'm kind of it. So could you play a little bit? You're in G sharp as well, are you?
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay.
Where am I? Yeah.
And could you just play a second, David? Because I think so you've got more. You have got a different EQ tone, haven't
warmer,
you?
Yeah.
Whether you've intentionally done that or not, but I think you have dialed in a tone that complements the way it's layered together. I think if the two tones were the same, at the point where you're playing the sort of dual riff stuff, I think it would get messy and mushy.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's
you've always kind of like, I think I've always like leaned on the side of a bit brighter.
You want to cut through. So whilst I like the warmth, I like the swell. It's basically kind of, you can kind of hear that.
We've naturally just kind of done that, I suppose. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's the first time we've actually kind of really listened and
Yeah, I think
examined.
it's actually-
Yeah, because you definitely were
Right,
like,
sound
you
good,
just
sound
do
good,
it
happy,
and see what happens, and that's exactly our vibe.
Yep.
Oh, well, look, I mean, that's kind of, tell us a bit more about what you've got sort of planned in terms of new music and where people can find out about you, because I think I'm done with my sort of gear interrogation. What's happening this year with the band?
So, new album out on the 25th of April, so coming up very quick, called Fallen Star. We're going on a UK tour like immediately to support that, so we start on the 21st, hitting up Wolverhampton, Glasgow, Leeds, Cardiff, and then finishing in London on the actual release day on the 25th. So that'll be really exciting. I don't think we've ever done...
This is Taylor better get his editing wings on here. If we're
Get it out the wire!
What are you releasing
Fly
the
on
album
screen now.
vinyl as well as
We
streaming
are,
platforms?
it'll be on vinyl and CD, out on Spine Farm Records, and and then we're going to be at a handful of festivals this summer. We're doing 2,000 Trees in the UK,
Cool.
Off to Poland for Mystic Fest.
Mystic Fest would be cool.
And then we've got our first like heavy metal cruise with Full Metal Cruise in September, which we've never done one of those.
On the Baltic Sea.
I'm hoping none of us go overboard, but
Oh, man,
we'll have to wait and see.
They sound like great gigs, those. I've not
for sure.
met anyone that's done the metal one, but I've met obviously loads of the Blues Cruise stuff. I know a few artists have done that, and a few that have done more like sort of 80s tributey sort of band stuff. And it always amazes me, just it seems like a great experience for the band. Like you get like you get a week paid for holiday on a cruise ship, and you sort of have to do 2 gigs or something like that. It's just like, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, there you go. That'll be fun. But yeah, please be careful. No
Yes,
man
we
overboard.
will. We will play it safe.
Well, honestly, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure is all ours. Thank you.
Links to find out more about the band will be in the description below. Thank you again for coming from Woking and buying things from
Bit of
Guildford.
travel. We got to go back as well. That's true.
No, it's great. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.